I see the 12:45 start time was a little ambitious. We're still missing like half the class. Yeah, it's not like they went home because all their stuff's here. So, I see Justin went home though, huh?
No.
Hey, Matt. We'll get started in a second. All right. Last activity. All right. Just uploaded the source files for the last activity. So if you wanted to see, you know, with the decrement counter and all that jazz. All right. We're going to cover one more thing with Redux for the people that are here, and then we're going to do group projects. So we're just going to briefly touch on it, and then do like an activity to do a transformation. Or, I don't know if we'll do that. We'll see how I feel. Okay, so here we have our Create React app. Okay, I just slacked out this, so if you want it, you have it, these source files. I'm going to install one more package called React Redux. So we have React, we have Redux, now we have React Redux. Boom. It's easy to remember, right? So a few things are going to have to change. If we go to our index.js, we can actually import something from React Redux now. React Redux. So there's a component in React Redux called the provider that I was starting to build out here before the break, but then I went to get lunch and I said, never mind. What we're going to do now, instead of passing the store directly into our app component, is we're actually going to use the provider to take care of our Redux stuff. So we don't have to do like kind of any weird like hookups. We don't have to pass the store in and use it all weird and try to like hook it up to state or anything. We can actually take that from the app altogether. We can pass the store instead into this provider. Now, obviously that means all of the work we did in the app so far is pointless. We don't need it anymore. We actually have to change how it works so it works with this React Redux. Now, this is the actual way that we implement Redux with a React application. It's less invasive, requires less work. It's a little easier for you to kind of shim it in. There's still some boilerplate, which sucks, but the good news is this whole thing can stay exactly the same. We have 0 changes to the Redux side of things. It's just plugging it into React slightly differently. So our index here is changed because our app now is wrapped in this provider component, which is the higher order component that deals with the React Redux kind of hookups. So in our app, we need a couple of things. We need to import, well actually, from React Redux, we only need to import one thing. There's a function in React Redux called connect, and we need that function. Connect is going to pretty much do this part right here, where we're setting up the listener to the state and then re-rendering our component when state changes. So I'm actually just going to get rid of this, and I'm actually going to get rid of this state too, because I don't want it anymore. All right. So React Redux, let me actually slack out the docs. Here are the docs, if you want to look at them later. React Redux has this different kind of feel to it. So it's something, this provider that we're using is called a higher order component. What that means is it's a component that takes another component and it changes the way the inner component works. So if you remember the props in React, we have access to this children prop. And we can do whatever we want with the children, and that's basically the components that are passed inside of a component. It could be a string, it could be another component, it could be anything. Well, if we pass a child component into this provider, we can then use the special connect function to augment our component before we export it so that the provider can attach to it and force changes in state. So to do that, you call the connect function, which will return another function that you then pass your app into. It looks kind of confusing, but basically, when you call connect, like so, you then have to pass your component into that function. This is kind of what it looks like just in one line. And then export default that wrapped component. That's because it's a function that returns a function. It's a closure. This is all well and good, but if we were to run it now, you'd notice that nothing actually happens. So, it hasn't done anything yet. There's another component to this, and that is there are two functions that you can pass into connect. There's actually more than that, but there's two that we're going to care about. One is called map state to props, and one is called map dispatch to props. So, what makes this React Redux unique is we use this connect function to connect it to the provider, and then we actually pass the Redux state changes as props into our component, as opposed to having to change the state and deal with the state. Now this component no longer has any state, because we're just going to be able to use the props. So the first one, map state to props. It's actually a function that takes in the state, and what you have to return is an object that represents the properties that are going to be passed into this component. Now, this should just be the stuff you want to pull out of state and give to your component. So in this case, we only want one thing out of state, and that's the count, right? We need to use the count here. So what we're going to do is create a property count and pull count out of state. Like so. And then we can pass map state to props in like that into this connect function. Now this count is accessible as props. So if we look at our state, we have count. I'm saying, hey, we need to use map state to props. This is going to get that state. It's like a get state call, basically. And we're going to rip the props out that we want. So count. It's going to turn to this object count, and that's going to be passed in as the props to this component. So now count is available as props. The other thing we need is dispatch. Before we were using the store to dispatch, and we no longer can do that because store isn't passed into this component anymore. So we have a map dispatch to props. And what this gets is the dispatch function. And what you're going to do is you're going to create functions that call dispatch and pass those in as props to your component. It's kind of confusing, but bear with me. For instance, we have handle increment calls dispatch of type increment. We're going to take this. We're going to call this on increment clicked. And that's going to call that. Then we have this dispatch with decrement on decrement clicked. Okay, so we have on increment clicked and on decrement clicked. Again, we need to pass map dispatch to props into this connect function. So now map state and map dispatch are both being passed in, which means our new props in this app are going to be any props we were passed in originally, which were none, right? We can actually look here to see there's no props passed into app anymore. All of the properties of the map state to props and all of the properties of the map dispatch to props, which means on increment clicked is available now as props, and on decrement clicked is available now as props. Now we've hooked up our app with React Redux. So there's still a lot of boilerplate, there is. But it makes it simpler in the sense that we don't have to worry about trying to pass in the Redux store and managing the Redux store. It'll automatically deal with re-renders and all that fun stuff. So if we look at this one, I'm going to run it again. Still works, just as before. But now, React Redux is doing all the work for us. Oops. Questions on React Redux? Now, React Redux, I think, is probably, it's simpler once you get it hooked up, but it's a little bit more confusing to understand in the beginning because there's a lot of misdirection going on, right? You have these functions that you're passing into another function, which creates another function that you pass your component into, that then you export to another function that's actually another component that takes your store. It's not that confusing, right? Exactly. So, from the beginning, the difference is we have this provider component from React Redux, and we pass our store into that. Boom, that's it. It should wrap your entire app. The whole thing should be wrapped in this provider. What?
Could you slack it?
Could I slack it? Yeah, I'll slack this out when I'm done. In my app, I have now imported the connect function from React Redux. Now remember, the Redux side of things that we added, the reducer, the store, and all that, has not changed at all. We've done nothing to it. So we imported this connect function, and I took everything out of state that existed before with the store. We don't need the store anymore. We have it implicitly. And then I use this connect function to wrap our app, right? So first we call connect, it returns another function, and we wrap our app in that. Connect takes in map state to props. Map state to props is a function that accepts the state from the store. So the store calls get state. And you can pull whatever you want out of that state and use it as props in your component. And that's what this is. That means we're going to get one prop called count. Map dispatch to props takes the dispatch function from the store and allows you to create functions that will call dispatch and pass them in as props on your component. And you use both of these to take both the state and the dispatch from the store and marry them into your component without actually using the store itself. Why is this helpful? Because it doesn't matter where in the tree I am, it doesn't matter how deep in the components I am, because I'm wrapped in the provider, I can use these. So if I have a profile picture that is used in two different components, and when the profile picture changes, I want to re-render just those components, I can connect those components alone. I don't have to connect the whole tree. I can just connect those and have them pull the profile picture out of state, and they will re-render when the profile picture changes, but nothing else will. So this Redux, React Redux takes care of that whole magical chain of things. Questions on this? I'll help you with that in a little bit. Alright, I'm going to zip this up and send it to you. Trying to think of what activity we should do. What was that? Because you're probably trying to call get state still and you can't. Alright, let me zip this really quick. Compress. I'm gonna slack it out. Okay, so I guess I'll leave this up to you guys. Would you rather continue learning React Redux, or save that for the next class, and or save that for the next class and work on group projects? Yes, what? I asked you. So, would the majority of people prefer to work on the projects? Raise your hand so I can see visually who would rather work on the projects. Who would rather learn more Redux, React Redux? The rest of you got to answer one. The other answer's not go home.
It's undecisive.
Yeah, if you don't answer Redux, then you answer the project.
All right, then go work on your group projects. We'll work on more React Redux. Here's your example of React Redux, but my class will do more. I'll tell Daniel that's where we left off, so Daniel's class can do more with React Redux. Unless anyone really, really wants to see more React Redux, but. All right. The other class is working on their projects as well, so good luck finding space. It's going to be a lot harder. But I'm going to stop the stream and